Have you ever met someone who didn't just enter your life but entered your soul? Someone who felt like home and heartbreak at the same time, as if the universe carved a moment in eternity just to bring you together, not to stay, but to shatter you awake. They didn't just love you, they activated something. They stirred memories, lifetimes, emotions that had no name. And even after they left, you were never the same again. You smiled differently. You carried a quiet storm, because what they left behind was not emptiness, it was awakening. This is not a love story. This is a soul story. It's not about happily ever after. It's about the moment that changed you forever. It's about the one you couldn't keep, and why the universe needed you to meet them. Not for comfort, but for growth. Not for safety, but for transformation. Some people don't come to love you gently. They come to break the illusions you built around your heart, to show you the you forgot you were. So now, let's get started. Take a breath, because what you're about to hear isn't just a story. It's your reflection, it's your release, and maybe, just maybe, it's the closure your soul has been silently begging for. Let's begin this journey, not to find answers, but to find yourself. All over again. Chapter 1. The cruel gift of a deep connection. Have you ever met someone whose presence felt like a divine interruption in your life? They didn't arrive gently. They arrived like lightning, sudden, electric, undeniable, as if the universe reached deep into your soul, pulled out your forgotten pieces, and placed them in someone else's eyes. But here's the harsh truth. Not everyone who touches your soul is meant to stay in your life. Sometimes they're meant to wake you up, because before them you were asleep, walking through life with a mask, a smile that hid confusion, a routine that numbed your deeper calling. You thought you knew who you were, but then they came, so nothing made sense anymore. They stirred your silence, triggered old wounds, resurrected dreams you buried just to survive. They cracked open parts of your heart that even you were afraid to face, and the most painful part? You felt seen, truly seen, maybe for the first time, but it didn't last, because it wasn't supposed to. This was never about love. It was about awakening. This was never about forever. It was about remembrance of who you are beneath the noise. Carl Jung once said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will rule your life and you will call it fate." That person, they were not fate. They were your mirror, your soul's messenger. A cosmic alarm clock ringing through the chaos of your comfort zone. They didn't come to complete you. They came to crack you open, to force you to look at your shadow, your patterns, your wounds, your truth. And yes, it hurts. It hurts to realize someone could make you feel that much only to disappear like mist in morning light. But listen carefully. This was not a loss. It was an assignment. It was the universe putting you back in alignment. You didn't meet them by accident. You met them because your soul was ready. Ready to remember, ready to heal, ready to evolve. So no, this wasn't a mistake. It was a brutal blessing, a cruel gift, wrapped in a connection that felt like home but was designed to push you out into the unknown. Because only in discomfort do we grow. Only in heartbreak do we meet our depth. And you, my friend, are about to rise. Chapter 2. Soul Chemistry. Why it feels so real. Why does it hit so deep? Why does it feel like they touched not just your heart, but something older, something ancient, something sacred? The truth is, when two souls collide with that kind of pull, it's never just about romance. It's never about flowers, dates, and promises. It's spiritual surgery, a divine disruption, a cosmic collision engineered not for comfort, but for evolution. Carl Jung once said, "The meeting of two personalities is like the contact of two chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." Let that sink in. When this person entered your life, something reacted. Something ancient inside you moved. Not just your emotions, but your inner wiring. Your spiritual DNA started to shift, and you began to unravel. This wasn't love at first sight. It was recognition at first soul glance, as if you didn't meet them. You remembered them, the way they spoke, the way their presence lingered even after they were gone. It wasn't logical. It was chemical. It was energetic. It was alchemical. Because this wasn't about building a safe life together. It was about awakening the parts of yourself that had gone numb, the parts buried under trauma, silence, routine, survival. They didn't come to hold your hand through calm waters. They came to throw you into the storm so that you could remember you were born with wings. And that storm, that fire, was never meant to destroy you. It was meant to burn down the version of you that was living someone else's story. You see, this is alchemy. This is soul chemistry, not the sweet kind. The sacred, unsettling, soul-stretching kind. The kind that forces you to let go of illusions. The illusions of control, the masks, the false narratives, the shoulds that society planted in you. They came to break the mirror you were using so you could finally see your reflection in their eyes. And that's why it felt so real. Not because it was meant to last, but because it was meant to change you. You were never supposed to stay the same after meeting them. You were supposed to shed, to question, to evolve, to feel things so deeply that you'd never again accept a shallow life. So if you're still wondering why you can't forget them, why their memory lives in your body like a ghost that won't leave, it's because they were more than a person. They were a portal to your higher self, to your deepest wounds, to the you were always meant to become. And that kind of connection, it doesn't fade easily, because it didn't come to stay, it came to transform. Chapter 3. Synchronicity or Punishment. Why would the universe show me something so beautiful, only to take it away? Have you ever screamed that question into the silence of your own heartbreak? Have you ever looked up at the sky with tears in your eyes and whispered, "What was the point of this? Why make me feel something so real, just to rip it away?" You're not alone. That question lives in the deepest corners of every soul that's ever loved deeply and lost loudly. But here's the truth no one tells you. It wasn't punishment. It was preparation. It wasn't a betrayal by the universe. It was an invitation from your soul. Because that connection you experienced, it wasn't designed to bring you comfort. It was designed to bring you clarity. It was meant to break the illusion that you were awake when you were still fast asleep. Carl Jung called this synchronicity, not coincidence, not randomness, but a meaningful alignment of events, or in this case, souls. When Jung talked about synchronicity, he wasn't talking about luck. He was talking about divine timing, about moments that pierce through the noise of life and remind you, you are being guided, even through the chaos. That person didn't randomly appear in your life. They were placed there. Like a key to a locked door you didn't even know existed inside you, a collision of timelines, a cosmic mirror, a divine echo that said, it's time to wake up. But wake up to what? To the patterns that have ruled your life, to the stories you've been living that were never truly yours, to the wounds you've been hiding behind achievement, behind routine, behind pretending to be okay. They weren't here to complete you. They were here to confront you, to stir your unconscious, to shatter the mask, to pull your shadow into the light where it could no longer hide. You see, synchronicity is not soft. It's precise. It's surgical. It knows exactly what you need, even when it hurts. And sometimes what you need most is someone to walk into your world and remind you of everything you've forgotten, who you are, what you crave, what you fear, what you've been suppressing just to survive. They didn't just touch your heart. They exposed your soul, and yes, the universe took them away, not to punish you, but to protect the purpose of the meeting, because if they stayed, you'd focus on them. But if they leave, you're forced to focus on you. This isn't about blame, this is about becoming. That connection was never the destination. It was the activation, the spark that ignited your awakening, the pain that finally made you pay attention. So next time you ask, why did I meet someone I couldn't keep? Remember, the universe doesn't send people to fulfill your fantasy. It sends them to fulfill your growth. This wasn't a punishment. It was a divine whisper, a synchronicity with one message. The old you must die, so the real you can be born. Chapter 4. The Mirror Effect. Why they broke you. Open. You thought they were the one. The final chapter, the reward at the end of your long wait, the one who would stay, love you, fix everything that hurt inside. But they weren't your destination. They were your mirror. And mirrors don't comfort you, they confront you, they don't tell you what you want to hear, they show you what you've been refusing to see. They came into your life, not to heal you, but to reveal you, to hold up a reflection so clear, so raw, so unfiltered, that suddenly all your unconscious patterns were visible. Your need to be chosen, your fear of being abandoned, your unhealed childhood wounds dressed in adult relationships, your tendency to shrink, to please, to overextend, just to be loved. They didn't break you. They showed you where you were already breaking, where you'd been bleeding quietly for years. They simply pulled the curtain back on your pain, and that's why it hurt so deeply. Because for the first time, you were awake. You thought, if it ended, it must mean I failed. If they left, it must mean I'm not enough. I'm not. But what if the ending was the beginning? What if the heartbreak was the doorway you never would have walked through on your own? Carl Jung taught us that until we make the unconscious conscious, it will continue to rule our lives. And we'll just call it fate. But here's the thing. Pain brings awareness, and awareness brings power. And sometimes the only way the universe can wake you up is by sending someone to press on your wounds so hard. You have to look at them. You weren't broken because it ended. You were reborn because it did. That person, they were never yours to keep. They were your soul's alarm clock, a divine catalyst wrapped in human skin, a sacred disturbance designed to pull your healing to the surface. And yes, it was messy. Yes, it was painful. But healing always begins in chaos. Because before transformation, there is the tearing. Before peace, there is the earthquake. Before the light, there is the mirror. And that mirror shows you every shadow, every scar, every lie you've believed about yourself. They didn't come to break your heart. They came to break your pattern, to stop the cycle, to interrupt the script you've been unknowingly acting out for years. The pain wasn't punishment, it was the portal, to a deeper truth, to a freer you, to the version of yourself that doesn't settle, doesn't chase, doesn't beg to be seen, because they've finally seen themselves. So when you ask, why did they hurt me so deeply? Understand this. They didn't hurt you. They exposed the part of you that was already hurting. And in that exposure, you found your first real chance to heal. This wasn't the end of your story. It was the mirror that showed you where your real story begins. Chapter 5. Love that was never meant to stay. We live in a world obsessed with permanence, a world that tells us if love is real, it lasts. If they leave, it wasn't meant to be. If it ended, it was a mistake. But what if we've misunderstood the purpose of love altogether? We've been taught to romanticize love, to see it as a fairy tale, a prize, a destination where all wounds magically vanish. But that's not love. That's the ego's fantasy. Because the truth, some of the most real, most intense, most soul-shifting connections aren't meant to stay, they're meant to burn, to ignite something inside you, even if it sets your entire world on fire. Some people come into your life like a flame in a dark room. They illuminate everything, your hopes, your fears, your shadow, your soul. And then, just as quickly, they disappear into the night. Not because they didn't care, but because their role was never to stay. It was to awaken. You see, not every connection is about building something. Some are about destroying illusions. They come to scorch the lies you've been living, to burn through the masks you've worn for survival, to tear down the false identities you've built just to feel loved. This is soul work, not storytelling. This is spiritual fire, not romantic fairy tale. Carl Jung believed that the soul doesn't care about your comfort. It cares about your growth. And sometimes, growth comes dressed as heartbreak. You didn't lose a love. You lost a version of yourself. The version that begged to be chosen. The version that thought love had to look a certain way to be real. The version that was still living in fear, in fantasy, in smallness. When they left, yes, it hurt. It cracked something open inside you. But what if that crack was the doorway? The doorway to a deeper truth, to a quieter strength, to a version of yourself that doesn't just chase love, but embodies it. The ones that burn us the deepest, often free us the most. And you're not broken because it ended. You're braver because it did. You looked love in the face, raw, real, wild, and you let it change you. That is not weakness, that is spiritual strength. So stop saying you lost love. You didn't lose, you transcended. You graduated from illusions. You leveled up from needing love to becoming love. And trust this, the universe never removes something that's meant to be part of your destiny, only something that was part of your awakening. So honor the burn, let the ashes fall, because who you are now is someone reborn in truth, and that is a love story the ego could never understand. Chapter 6. They woke you up. Now what? You can't stop thinking about them, can you? Even after all this time. Even when you know they're not coming back. Even when life has forced you to move forward. Their memory still clings to your soul like perfume in the dark. Faint, haunting, permanent. And you've asked yourself 100 times, why? Why can't I just let this go? Why does their absence feel louder than their presence ever did? But here's the truth. Most people will never dare to say out loud, you can't forget them, because they didn't just enter your life. They entered your becoming. They didn't just break your heart. They awakened your soul. They cracked open a portal to the version of you that was waiting. Waiting beneath years of self-betrayal, people-pleasing, and living life on autopilot. They touched the unfinished symphony inside you. The raw, unpolished, hidden self that was screaming to rise, but was buried under wounds you pretended didn't exist. They pulled you toward a future you were too afraid to approach alone. A future that required strength, self-honesty, courage to walk alone, and the wisdom to stop begging others to walk with you. Yes, they woke you up. But now what? Now? The real journey begins. Because here's the raw truth. They were never meant to walk with you. They were never your destination. They were the earthquake that split your path wide open, so you could finally see the road you were always meant to walk. They didn't come to complete you. They came to collapse everything that was never really you. So instead of chasing closure from them, instead of sitting in the echo of why did they leave me, instead of looking for meaning in their silence, shift the question. Ask yourself the only question that truly matters now. What did they awaken in me? Because that question changes everything. That question isn't about the past. It's about your rebirth. Maybe they awakened the version of you that no longer wants to settle for half love. Maybe they reminded you of your soul's craving for purpose, passion, presence. Maybe they showed you your capacity to feel, to break, to bleed, and still rise like a warrior out of the fire. When someone wakes you up, your soul doesn't give you the option to go back to sleep. You've seen too much now. You've felt too much now. You can't unknow your depth. You can't unsee your truth. And you sure as hell can't unlive the fire they lit inside of you. So, what now? Now, you become the version of yourself that you saw reflected in their eyes. Now as you walk the path that your soul has always known was yours, even when your mind was too afraid to admit it, you stop asking for closure. You become the closure. You stop trying to go back to who you were. You bury that version, with love, with gratitude, and with grace, because the greatest gift they gave you wasn't their love, it was their exit. And in that absence, you found your becoming. Let their departure be your awakening. Let their silence be your turning point. Let their memory be the reason you finally stop living small. They woke you up. Now you lead yourself home. No one else can do that for you. Not even the one who broke you open. Chapter 7. From survival to soul activation. You spent so long surviving, waking up every day wearing strength like a costume, smiling when you were exhausted, holding yourself together while quietly falling apart. You had mastered the art of functioning, but not the art of feeling. And then they came. They weren't just another person. They were a mirror, a frequency your soul hadn't touched in lifetimes. Their presence was disruptive, not because they were loud, but because they were true, and for the first time someone saw you. Not the version you curated, not the persona you presented to the world, but the raw, unfiltered essence of who you really are beneath the armor. They saw the flicker in your eyes when you talked about your dreams. They noticed the crack in your voice when you mentioned your past. They caught the hesitation in your smile, that silent scream that said, "I'm strong, but God, I'm tired." And in that moment, your survival mode started to shake. the numbness that once protected you. It began to crack open. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from being alone, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." That's the loneliness you've carried for years, not the absence of people, but the absence of understanding, of being met at your depth, of being felt, not just heard. They didn't heal you, but they disrupted your false peace. They poked the silent ache you had hidden beneath your routines. They shattered your illusion of "I'm fine," and whispered something your soul hadn't heard in a long time. "Here, feel this. Feel the weight you've been carrying. Feel the grief you buried under responsibility. Feel the rage, the longing, the unmet hunger for a life that reflects your soul's truth." They didn't teach you something new. They reminded you of what you already knew, but had silenced for the sake of safety. Because survival is silent. It's numb. It doesn't take risks. It doesn't ask questions. It just repeats, maintains, endures. But soul activation, that's wild. It's chaotic. It's emotional, honest, rebellious. It breaks the rules you created to protect yourself and forces you to ask, what would life look like if I actually lived it for me? They woke that question inside you. They stirred the part of you that was tired of the script, tired of the masks, tired of the lie that said, "This is all there is." And in that disruption, you were given a sacred choice. Stay asleep in the comfort of survival, or wake up in the uncertainty of becoming. You didn't meet them by mistake. Your soul called for this shakeup, this activation, this deep inner unraveling, because when the soul is ready to rise, the universe doesn't send ease, it sends earthquakes. And this person was your earthquake, not to destroy you, but to remind you that you were built for more than just enduring. You were made to expand, to feel, to break cycles, to remember who you were before the world told you to shrink. So when they cracked your numbness and said, "Here, feel this," it wasn't to hurt you, it was to awaken you, to pull you out of autopilot, to guide you home. And now that you've felt, now that you've been activated, you can never go back. This is your turning point. Your soul is no longer asking, it's demanding. And the question now is no longer, "Why did they shake me?" but rather, "Who am I becoming because they did?" Chapter 8. The initiation. Why it had to hurt. This wasn't just heartbreak. This wasn't just someone leaving. This wasn't another sad chapter in your story. This was initiation, a spiritual threshold, a cosmic doorway, the sacred tearing apart of everything you thought you were, so your true self could finally be born. You see, real transformation isn't polite. It doesn't knock. It rips through you when you least expect it. It shows up as a soul-level rupture, the kind of pain that doesn't just sit in your chest. It shakes the foundation of your identity. Because to truly awaken, to truly meet yourself beyond ego, beyond illusion, something inside you must die. Carl Jung called this process individuation, the sacred path of separating from the false self, from the conditioned patterns, from the mask you built just to survive in this world. It is not a gentle journey. It is a soul surgery. And pain? Pain is the scalpel. This heartbreak, it wasn't here to break you. It was here to initiate you. It had to hurt, because nothing shallow can reach that deep. No surface-level experience could have ever awakened the buried grief, the abandoned dreams, the repressed rage, the silenced voice inside of you. You needed something powerful enough to shake your sleep, and this pain, it did just that. It didn't come to destroy your life. It came to destroy your limits, to burn down the lies you told yourself. "I'm not enough. I have to earn love. I must stay small to stay safe." And when it burned, it felt like everything was falling apart. But in reality, it was everything false that was falling away. This is what initiation feels like. Confusing, violent, sacred. It looks like loss, but it's actually the shedding of all that was never truly yours. That person? They were your trigger, your guide, your unintentional healer. They activated this portal not because they were perfect, but because they were the perfect mirror for what your soul was ready to face. And as the pain came, wave after wave, you were being carved, cleansed, cleared, not for punishment, but for rebirth. This wasn't about them, it was about you. Your ego called it betrayal. but your soul called it ascension. Because pain is how the universe whispers, you've outgrown this version of yourself. It's time to evolve. So if it hurts, let it. Let it burn. Let it unravel the stories you've held onto for too long. You're not being broken. You're being initiated into the rawness of your real self, into the strength that can't be faked, into the clarity that only fire brings. Because after this, you won't settle for half versions of life. You won't wear the mask. You won't shrink to fit into places that no longer match your frequency. You've crossed a threshold, and there is no going back. So honor the pain. Respect it. It's not your enemy. It's your passage, your right, your calling to rise. And the next time someone asks you, why did it hurt so much? You'll answer, not with bitterness, but with power. Because I was being reborn. Chapter 9. Integration. Carrying the flame, not the fantasy. The real tragedy was never losing them. It was almost losing yourself in the aftermath of their absence. You see, when a connection cuts deep, so deep it touches the bones of your soul, it doesn't just vanish when they leave. The echo lingers. The flame flickers in your chest long after their physical presence is gone. But here's where most people get stuck. They carry the fantasy, not the flame. They hold on to the illusion that if they wait long enough, if they replay the memories, if they become someone better, that person might come back. That ending might rewrite itself. That heartbreak might turn into healing from the outside. But that's not integration. That's attachment to the dream. And the dream is not what your soul came here to live. The truth? They were never the destination. They were the bridge. They were the spark, not the fire you were supposed to keep chasing, not the fairy tale you were meant to keep rewriting. Real integration is when you stop waiting for their return and start walking into your own. When you stop carrying their memory like a wound and start carrying it like a torch, a flame that doesn't burn you anymore but guides you, because the most sacred thing they gave you was not their love. It was what their love revealed. They showed you where you were still aching. They exposed what you had forgotten about yourself. They awakened parts of your soul you buried to survive. And now that you've seen it, felt it, faced it, you must honor it. But not by shrinking back into longing, not by living in the illusion that they were your ending. Because they weren't. They were the matchstick. That lit your inner fire. And now you carry the flame, not the fantasy, not the hope they'll understand. Not the version of you that begged for closure. That part is gone. That part served its purpose. The new you walks differently, thinks deeper, chooses clarity over chaos, and purpose over pain. Because when you integrate, you no longer need the person to stay in order to keep what the experience gave you. You become the keeper of the truth. You become the home you were seeking in them. You become the flame that no one else can dim. And you don't do it for revenge. You don't do it to prove you've moved on. You do it because your soul is done surviving. Now it's time to live consciously. So when their name floats into your mind, you'll smile. Not because you want them back, but because now you finally have yourself. Chapter 10. The universe sends who you need. Stop replaying it in your mind like it was all a mistake. It wasn't. It was never random. It was never meaningless. It wasn't bad luck. It was divine architecture. Because the universe doesn't waste pain. It doesn't send people into your life without a reason. And when someone enters your life and breaks you open, that is not an accident. That is a message. You weren't cursed. You were chosen. Chosen to evolve, to awaken. And maybe they didn't stay. Maybe the ending hurt in ways words can't describe. Maybe you still lie awake wondering, what if? What could have been? But here's the shift your soul is ready to make. They weren't sent to stay. They were sent to disarm you, to pierce through your defenses, to soften the hard shell you built around your heart. They came to interrupt your autopilot, to break the dam of emotions you've buried, to force you to feel again, even if it meant falling apart. Because sometimes you have to come undone to come home to yourself. Carl Jung said it perfectly. Your vision will become clear only when you look into your heart. Who looks outside, dreams. Who looks inside, awakens. And that's what this was, an awakening. They didn't come to fulfill the fantasy, they came to dismantle it, because the love you were chasing in someone else's eyes was a mirror for the love you had yet to give yourself. You didn't lose love. You found yourself. You found the version of you that can sit with silence and still feel whole. The version that no longer begs to be understood, but finally understands themselves. The version that no longer builds a life around being chosen, but chooses themselves every single time. So stop asking why it had to happen this way. The universe doesn't explain its precision. It sends people like arrows to your soul, not to wound you, but to point you home. They were not your person. They were your permission. Permission to break the illusion. Permission to let go of what no longer serves. Permission to finally become the most authentic version of you. They were the soul contract that said, you must awaken now. So if you're still holding on to the question, why did it end? Shift it to, what began because of it? Because what began was the real story, the real you, the rediscovery of your voice, the cracking open of your truth. And one day you'll realize the universe never took something from you, it gave you back to yourself. So bless the pain, honor the fire, and carry the lesson forward, not as a scar, but as your initiation mark. Because now you know the universe sends exactly who you need, even when it hurts, especially when it hurts. And through that pain, you rise, not as who you were, but as who you were always meant to become. You're not alone. If this message touched something deep inside you, if it echoed in the silence you've been carrying, if it spoke to that invisible ache you never found the words for, that connection you still think about at 2 a.m., that moment you never really got to close, and then hear this. You were never broken. You were being rebuilt. This wasn't just heartbreak. It was your rebirth. This wasn't about losing them. It was about finding you. You were never meant to keep them. They were never your final chapter. They were the match that sparked the fire of your becoming. They came to remind you of everything you forgot, that you're worthy, that you're whole, that your love doesn't need to be earned, it needs to be remembered. So if you're ready to stop waiting for the past to return, ready to stop replaying the fantasy of what could have been, ready to stop searching for closure that was always meant to come from within, then do this not for me, but for you. Hit the like button, as a silent promise to yourself, I'm choosing healing over holding on. Share this video with someone who's carrying the weight of an ending, someone who needs to hear, you're not crazy for feeling this deeply, you're human, you're healing, and you're not alone. And in the comments below, tell us, what did they awaken in you? Because sometimes writing it down, giving it words, is the very first step in setting it free. This space isn't just for viewers. It's for souls in transition, for people like you who've been cracked open and are brave enough to turn that pain into purpose. So speak, type, let it out. There's power in your truth. And maybe, just maybe, your words will be the mirror someone else needs to begin their healing too. This isn't goodbye. This is the beginning of your return. Back to yourself. Thank you for walking this path with us. Now go. Carry the flame.
On this episode, we are going to dive into one of the strangest and most enigmatic books of all time, The Red Book by Carl Jung. This is a book that captures the imagination of all who read it. Jung was a world-renowned psychologist and is considered one of the founders of analytical psychology. But even if you have never heard of Jung, if you open the Red Book to a random page and point your finger, you are guaranteed to discover a passage at your fingertip that will mystify, amuse, or inspire you. This is the strange aura of this book, and it is made all the more mysterious the more you learn about it. For instance, the Red Book was kept as a closely guarded secret for over 100 years. Jung published countless books and essays on the subject of analytical psychology in his lifetime, but never published the Red Book. And when Jung died in 1961, It was locked up in his family vault, leading many in the field to theorize that the contents of the book must be so wild that they would prove Carl Jung, the world-renowned founder of analytical psychology, was actually insane. So the Red Book was only allowed to be viewed by the most esteemed psychologists, under rare permission from his estate to open its infamous pages, and it stayed this way for decades. Jung would occasionally mention the book during his life and lectures, saying, "To the superficial observer, it will appear like madness," unquote. It remained in the darkness of that family vault until only very recently, when in 2009, it was finally published for public appreciation and for us to dive into today. Why was it kept hidden for so long? And is it a work of visionary creativity or profound personal reflection, or both? Let's find out. Part 1. The River of Blood. Carl Gustav Jung was a Swiss psychiatrist during the early 1900s who is credited, along with Freud, as being one of the founders of analytical psychology. His insights into the human mind shaped our understanding of psychology into what it is today. For example, Jung coined the terms introvert and extrovert. He discovered and elaborated on the archetypes of the unconscious mind. He created the foundation for those personality types, those tests we all like to take online that label you an IFNJ or ESFP and give you a superhero name like the counselor or the visionary and so on. He theorized the human mind creates a shadow in itself. He also uncovered that the unconscious mind has an even deeper layer called the collective unconscious, which we all share, and countless other insights, which he shared with the world. In many ways, his theories on the mind are so unique that they continue to stand on a parallel track to modern clinical psychology. For example, if you are looking for a therapist, you can just look up therapist, or you can look up Jungian analyst, and you will find a therapist who specializes in the Jungian approach to understanding psychology. On that note, there is the C.G. Jung Institute here in New York City, and on their website they say, "The C.G. Jung Institute of New York offers a postgraduate clinical training program that prepares its students for a professional practice as a Jungian psychoanalyst, and membership within a worldwide community of Jungian analysts," unquote. So, why are we talking about a psychiatrist in a podcast about creativity? Well, the way to think about Carl Jung is this. He is the Nikola Tesla of psychology. Through his influence, the entire field was reimagined. He was a visionary with an unparalleled intellect, very reminiscent of someone like Leonardo da Vinci, with his insatiable curiosity. Really one of these once-in-a-generation types. If there was an award in psychology for the most startlingly creative approach to understanding the human mind, it would be awarded to Carl Gustav Jung. Now, to explore the full scope of Jung's discoveries would easily take an entire college semester, and those classes exist, so this will by no means be a full investigation of his thoughts. And for that, I encourage your own explorations, your own research. In this episode, we will focus on the infamous Red Book. So, what is it? If you were to enter Jung's house near Zurich, in Switzerland, and go to his study, as you approached his large wooden desk, you would find a massive red leather book, about 12 inches by 15 inches. Inscribed in gold on the binding is a Latin title, Liber Novus. As you flip open the heavy red leather cover, you notice the pages are thick, like ancient parchment. The writing is done by hand in a careful calligraphy style. The languages are a mixture of German, Latin, and Greek. All throughout the book, there are beautiful and intricate paintings. Some of them take up the full parchment page, and others are seamlessly integrated within the text. Looking at this book, you would have to assume this is an ancient religious manuscript, maybe a work of medieval literature from 1,000 years ago. This is no ordinary book. Side note, do yourself a favor and visit archive.org. That's archive.org, and search Carl Jung, The Red Book. That's Jung spelled Jung. They have a wonderful, high-resolution scanned copy of it, but you must flip through these pages and see it for yourself. Go full screen, really zoom in and stuff. That's archive.org. Now, back to the show. So, what is the Red Book trying to transmit? With its handwritten calligraphy and carefully crafted paintings? A fable? A religious epic? The Red Book was a personal project that Jung was working on, in which he attempted to record in vivid detail the visionary experiences he was having during the period between December 1913 and January 1914. These experiences weren't some pleasant daydreams. They were symptoms of a mental breakdown that Jung was suffering at this point in his life. And the irony, it wasn't lost on him. To be a psychiatrist with his own regular patients and to be suffering from a near-psychotic episode himself. In the book, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung shares this with us. In order to grasp the fantasies which were stirring in me underground, I knew that I had to let myself plummet down into them, as it were. I felt not only violent resistance to this, but a distinct fear, for I was afraid of losing command of myself and becoming a prey to the fantasies. And, as a psychiatrist, I realized only too well what that meant. After prolonged hesitation, however, I saw that there was no other way out. I had to take the chance, had to try to gain power over them, for I realized that if I did not do so, I ran the risk of their gaining power over me. A cogent motive for my making the attempt was the conviction that I could not expect of my patients something I did not dare to do myself. The excuse that a helper stood at their side would not pass muster, for I was well aware that the so-called helper, that is, myself, could not help them unless he knew their fantasy material from his own direct experience, and that at present all he possessed were a few theoretical prejudices of dubious value. This mental break that Jung has in December 1913 seems to have its origins in the year leading up to it. It is around this time that Jung has a dramatic falling out with his mentor, Sigmund Freud. In the field of psychology at the time, Freud was considered untouchable and his theories beyond critique. And it is true that Freud can largely be credited for shining a light into the unconscious of the human brain and revealing new worlds of study. For a time, in that field of psychology, Jung was being considered the heir apparent to Freud, the successor who would carry on Freud's theories. But after years of friendship and respect, Jung could not stay silent any longer. He disagreed with Freud on pivotal positions. He thought Freud was too fixated on sexuality as the cause of all neurosis. He thought Freud too frequently assumed all answers to personal issues stemmed from childhood. Jung also suspected that Freud's concept of the unconscious did not go deep enough. And did not reach the depths of the unconscious, only scratched the surface of what Jung called the personal unconscious. And one final element that Jung could not tolerate about Freud: he was utterly cynical about human nature. Freud had no patience for exploring spiritual matters, or matters of the meaning of life and the human inclination toward symbolism and myth that we see in all world cultures. Jung writes, "When I was working on my book about the libido and approaching the end of the chapter, The Sacrifice, I knew in advance that its publication would cost me my friendship with Freud, for I planned to set down in it my own conception of incest, the decisive transformation of the concept of libido, and various other ideas in which I differed from Freud. To me, incest signified a personal complication only in the rarest cases. Usually incest has a highly religious aspect, for which reason the incest theme plays a decisive part in almost all cosmogonies and in numerous myths. But Freud clung to the literal interpretation of it and could not grasp the spiritual significance of incest as a symbol. I knew that he would never be able to accept any of my ideas on this subject. I spoke with my wife about this and told her of my fears. She attempted to reassure me, for she thought that Freud would magnanimously raise no objections, although he might not accept my views. I myself was convinced that he could not do so. For 2 months, I was unable to touch my pen, so tormented was I by the conflict. Should I keep my thoughts to myself, or should I risk the loss of so important a friendship? At last, I resolved to go ahead with the writing, and it did indeed cost me Freud's friendship. After the very public break with Freud, Jung says all his friends and acquaintances dropped away. His book was declared to be rubbish, and he was labeled a mystic, not a psychologist. Suddenly, the support structure of an entire community seemed to ostracize him. No longer a golden child, he was now forced to venture out into his own conception of psychology, while continuing his own psychiatric practice. Jung goes on, "But I had foreseen my isolation and harbored no illusion about the reactions of my so-called friends. That was a point I had thoroughly considered beforehand. I had known that everything was at stake, and that I had to take a stand for my convictions." Unquote. And so it begins to make sense. Through this experience, Jung entered into a liminal state, a place between worlds. He wasn't the person he had studied and trained to be anymore. He lost his colleagues and the social support he had relied on for years. But he wasn't yet the world-renowned psychologist that he would become years later. He was in a state of transition, a point of tremendous potential, but also tremendous upheaval. And as we learn through studying the lives of many of history's great achievers, this kind of dark night of the soul brings with it the potential for a phoenix to rise from the ashes. And this is when the visions started. In Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung says, "Toward the autumn of 1913, the pressure I had felt in me seemed to be moving outward, as though there were something in the air. The atmosphere actually seemed to me darker than it had been. It was as though the sense of oppression no longer sprang exclusively from a psychic situation, but from concrete reality. This feeling grew more and more intense. In October, while I was alone on a journey, I was suddenly seized by an overpowering vision. I saw a monstrous flood covering all the northern and low-lying lands between the North Sea and the Alps. When it came up to Switzerland, I saw that the mountains grew higher and higher to protect our country. I realized that a frightful catastrophe was in progress. I saw the mighty yellow waves, the floating rubble of civilization, and the drowned bodies of uncounted thousands. Then the whole sea turned to blood. This vision lasted about 1 hour. I was perplexed and nauseated and ashamed of my weakness. 2 weeks passed. Then the vision recurred, under the same conditions, even more vividly than before, and the blood was more emphasized. An inner voice spoke, "Look at it well. It is wholly real, and it will be so. You cannot doubt it." That winter, someone asked me what I thought were the political prospects of the world in the future. I replied that I had no thoughts on the matter, but that I saw rivers of blood. I asked myself whether these visions pointed to a revolution, but could not really imagine anything of the sort. And so I drew the conclusion that they had to do with me, and decided that I was menaced by a psychosis. The idea of war did not occur to me at all. Soon afterward, in the spring and early summer of 1914, I had a thrice-repeated dream that in the middle of summer, an Arctic cold wave descended and froze the land to ice. I saw, for example, the whole of Lorraine and its canals frozen, and the entire region totally deserted by human beings. All living green things were killed by frost. This dream came in April and May, and for the last time in June 1914. In the third dream, frightful cold had again descended from out of the cosmos. This dream, however, had an unexpected end. There stood a leaf-bearing tree, but without fruit. My tree of life, I thought, whose leaves had been transformed by the effects of the frost into sweet grapes full of healing juices. I plucked the grapes and gave them to a large, waiting crowd. On August 1st, the World War broke out. Now, my task was clear. I had to try to understand what had happened and to what extent my own experience coincided with that of mankind in general. Therefore, my first obligation was to probe the depths of my own psyche. Jung had begun a long process of writing down all of these visions, daydreams, and vivid dreams. He felt like his unconscious was trying to communicate with him, trying to tell him something. His river of blood vision was in October of 1913 and reoccurred in the weeks following. His killing frost dreams were in April, May, and June of 1914. World War I began in July of 1914. Did his unconscious foresee the imminent destruction and loss of countless lives that was coming? Or were the visions a symbolic representation of the inner turmoil that Jung was feeling at this time? He mentions an inner voice telling him, "Look at it well. It is wholly real, and it will be so. You cannot doubt it." What does one make of that? It is with this frame of mind that Jung decides he needs to find out for himself. He needs to find out what is happening in his own mind at this pivotal stage in his life, and this is where the Red Book begins. Part 2. The Descent. Jung devises an ingenious and simple method for communicating with his unconscious. It first involves entering a meditative state. It is known that Jung practiced yoga and was aware of how to alter his body through breathing techniques. He had a scholar's appetite for cultures and myths of the world. On this point, in Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung says, "I was frequently so wrought up that I had to do certain yoga exercises in order to hold my emotions in check. But since it was my purpose to know what was going on within myself, I would do these exercises only until I had calmed myself enough to resume my work with the unconscious. As soon as I had the feeling that I was myself again, I abandoned this restraint upon the emotions and allowed the images and inner voices to speak afresh." Unquote. Once Jung had placed himself in a meditative state, perhaps a place bordering the hypnagogic state, he would engage a fantasy of digging a hole, which would go deeper and deeper and even deeper. In the book, Introduction to Jungian Psychology, he says, "For the sake of then trying to achieve the maximum of honesty with myself, I wrote everything down very carefully, following the old Greek mandate, 'Give away all thou possesses, then thou shalt receive.' The writing of this material took me into November 1913, and then I came to an end of it, not knowing what would come next. I thought perhaps more introspection was needed. When we introspect, we look within and see if there is anything to be observed. And if there's nothing, we may either give up the introspective process or find a way of boring through to the material that escapes the first survey. I devised such a boring method by fantasizing that I was digging a hole, and by accepting this fantasy as perfectly real. This is naturally somewhat difficult to do, to believe so thoroughly in a fantasy that it leads you into further fantasy, just as if you were digging a real hole and passing from one discovery to another. But when I began on that hole, I worked and worked so hard that I knew something had to come of it. That fantasy had to produce and lure out other fantasies. Of course, in using a hole, I was using an archetype of considerable power in stimulating the unconscious, for the mystery attached to caves comes down from immemorial times. One thinks at once of the Mithraic cult, of the catacombs, etc. So the more I worked on this fantasy hole, the more I seemed to descend. Finally, I felt I had come to a place where I could go no further. I said to myself that being the case, I would then go horizontally. And then it seemed as if I were in a corridor, and as though I were wading in black slime." Unquote. In the Red Book, there is an entry for December 12, 1913, which describes one of these visionary meditation sessions with startling results. The entry is entitled, "Descent into Hell in the Future." Jung writes, "In the following night, the air was filled with many voices. A loud voice called, 'I am falling.' Others cried out confused and excited during this. 'Where to? What do you want?' Should I entrust myself to this confusion? I shuddered. It is a dreadful deep. Do you want me to leave myself to chance, to the madness of my own darkness? Whither? Whither? You fall, and I want to fall with you, whoever you are." The spirit of the depths opened my eyes, and I caught a glimpse of the inner things, the world of my soul, the many-formed and changing. I see a gray rock face along which I sink into great depths. A dwarf, clad entirely in leather, stood before it, minding the entrance. I stand in black dirt up to my ankles in a dark cave. Shadows sweep over me. I am seized by fear, but I know I must go in. I crawl through a narrow crack in the rock and reach an inner cave whose bottom is covered with black water. But beyond this, I catch a glimpse of a luminous red stone, which I must reach. It is a six-sided crystal which gives off a cold, reddish light. I wade through the muddy water. The cave is full of the frightful noise of shrieking voices. I take the stone. It covers a dark opening in the rock. I hold the stone in my hand, peering around inquiringly. I do not want to listen to the voices. They keep me away. This dark hole, I want to know where it leads and what it says. An oracle? Is this the place of Pythia? Here, something wants to be uttered. I place my ear to the opening. I hear the flow of underground waters. I see the bloody head of a man on the dark stream. Someone wounded, someone slain floats there. I take in this image for a long time, shuddering. I see a large black scarab floating past on the dark stream. In the deepest reach of the stream shines a red sun, radiating through the dark water. There I see, and a terror seizes me, small serpents on the dark rock walls, striving towards the depths where the sun shines. 1,000 serpents crowd around, veiling the sun. Deep night falls. A red stream of blood, thick red blood springs up, surging for a long time, then ebbing. I am seized by fear. What did I see? It seems that this vision left such a deep and strong impression on Jung's mind that it left him in a state of awe. It reaches a point of reverence in the passage of writing that follows. Following the recounting of the vision, he continues, "Heal the wound that doubt inflicts on me, my soul. That too is to be overcome, so that I can recognize your supreme meaning, how far away everything is and how I have turned back. My spirit is a spirit of torment. It tears asunder my contemplation. It would dismantle everything and rip it apart. I am still a victim of my thinking. When can I order my thinking to be quiet, so that my thoughts, those unruly hounds, will crawl to my feet? How can I ever hope to hear your voice louder, to see your face clearer, when all my thoughts howl? I am stunned, but I want to be stunned, since I have won to you, my soul, to trust you even if you lead me through madness. How shall I ever walk under your sun if I do not drink the bitter draught of slumber to the lees? Help me so that I do not choke on my own knowledge. The fullness of my knowledge threatens to fall in on me. My knowledge has 1,000 voices, an army roaring like lions. The air trembles when they speak, and I am their defenseless sacrifice. Keep it far from me, science, that clever knower, that bad prison master who binds the soul and imprisons it in a lightless cell. But above all, protect me from the serpent of judgment, who only appears to be a healing serpent, yet in the depths is infernal poison and agonizing death. I want to go down cleansed into your depths with white garments and not rush in like some thief, seizing whatever I can and fleeing breathlessly. Let me persist in divine astonishment, so that I am ready to behold your wonders. Let me lay my head on a stone before your door, so that I am prepared to receive your light." This is no longer the Jung that the world knew from his analytical psychology work. This writing resembles the words of a mad saint or a visionary monk. This reminds me of the mystical poem Dark Night of the Soul from the 1500s by St. John of the Cross. It honestly sounds like a love letter that Jung is writing to his own soul, taking a position of reverence and humility. This is what makes the Red Book so strange and unique. We are watching the inner workings of a mind struggling through an existential crisis. And through that process, we see that mind reaching spiritual insights and self-knowledge, a kind of divine madness. We are witnessing an alchemical process taking place. Jung mentions, when the desert begins to bloom, it brings forth strange plants. You will consider yourself mad, and in a certain sense you will in fact be mad." Unquote. The footnote on the bottom of that page sheds further light on this phenomenon. It is footnote number 89, and it states, Socrates distinguished 4 types of divine madness. 1. Inspired divination, such as by the prophetess at Delphi. 2. Instances in which individuals, when ancient sins had given rise to troubles, have prophesied and incited to prayer and worship. 3. Possession by the Muses, since the technically skilled, untouched by the madness of the Muses, will never be a good poet. And 4. The lover." Unquote. In the coming months, Jung struggled to understand this vision of the red crystal and the scarab, and he would retell it in his lectures for many years to come. In the Red Book, he gives us his analysis of the symbols. The following passage was written in autumn of 1914, almost a year after he first had this vision and after World War I had erupted. "Blood shone at me from the red light of the crystal, and when I picked it up to discover its mystery, there lay the horror uncovered before me. In the depths of what is to come lay murder, the blonde hero slain. The black beetle is the death that is necessary for renewal. And so thereafter a new sun glowed, the sun of the depths, full of riddles, a sun of the night. And as the rising sun of spring quickens the dead earth, so the sun of the depths quickened the dead. And thus began the terrible struggle between light and darkness. Out of that burst the powerful and ever unvanquished source of blood. This was what was to come, which you now experience in your life, and it is even more than that. I had this vision on the night of 12th December 1913. I would not have been able to see what was to come if I could not have seen it in myself. Therefore, I take part in that murder. The sun of the depths also shines in me after the murder has been accomplished. The 1,000 serpents that want to devour the sun are also in me. I myself am a murderer and murdered, sacrificer and sacrificed. The upwelling blood streams out of me. You all have share in the murder. In you the reborn one will come to be, and the sun of the depths will rise, and 1,000 serpents will develop from your dead matter and fall on the sun to choke it. Your blood will stream forth. The people demonstrate this at the present time in unforgettable acts that will be written with blood in unforgettable books for eternal memory." Jung unmistakably talks like a mystic in these passages. That dreaded term that the colleagues of Freud tried to denigrate him with. The entire Red Book flows like this. There are passages that retell a vision he experienced, followed by prosaic rumination on the subject or a dialogue with his soul, pleading for answers. And all of this is written in an old calligraphy style with accompanying paintings. What does one make of this? It is certainly more than a journal. It has the spirit of a dramatic, visionary work. What can one even compare it to? There are no modern equivalents. This is perhaps why Jung chose to officially call the Red Book by the enigmatic title Liber Novus, Libernovus, which is Latin for the new book. It is a kind of new document, and yet the use of Latin in the title and throughout its text is an acknowledgement that it is something rooted in ancient traditions. Latin is a dead language. There are no countries that speak and write in Latin. There is a moment in the Red Book that Jung's soul tells him that he must bring the dead to life. Perhaps this is part of the fruition of that sentiment. We breathe life into the old ways by making them new again. Could Jung's deep descent into his own unconscious itself be a revival of an ancient tradition? Was he inspired to take this journey through his knowledge of similar practices in ancient cultures? I am pretty certain that he was. He never says it outright, but there is a telling phrase he mentions in passing during the red crystal vision. I take the stone, it covers a dark opening in the rock. I hold the stone in my hand, peering around inquiringly. I do not want to listen to the voices, they keep me away. This dark hole, I want to know where it leads and what it says. An oracle? is at the place of Pythia." Unquote. There was a fascinating tradition in ancient Greece. If you were seeking guidance of any kind, you would visit an oracle. An oracle is a person who acts as a medium between the world of the gods and the world of humans. These oracles would often practice rituals of purification and enter a trance-like meditative state, during which it was believed they communed with the gods. The most esteemed oracle in all of Greece was the Oracle of Delphi, whose name was Pythia. This is who Jung is referring to in that passing comment. To better understand the nature of such a tradition, let's travel back to ancient Greece, 2,400 years ago, to visit the Temple of Apollo at Delphi and meet Pythia herself. Here we are, in Delphi, Greece. The year is 400 BC, and we are standing on Mount Parnassus, overlooking the lush surrounding landscape, hills and valleys covered with dark pine trees and olive tree groves. Just a soul-stirring view with the mountains and valleys around us, and what a perfectly clear blue sky. The Temple of Apollo is just up this way. It'll be a few minutes' walk. You know, to the Greeks, Delphi is considered the center of the world. The story goes that at dawn on a certain day, Zeus sent 2 eagles flying, one from the easternmost part of the world and one from the westernmost part, and they met right over Delphi. Seeing what it looks like, you can imagine why the Greeks felt that way. There is just a special aura to this place. The symbol of Delphi is actually the navel, and a large ornamental egg-like stone adorns the center of the temple, representing the absolute center of the world. If you look down there, at the foot of the mountain, you can see crowds of people. They are trying to make their way up to the temple, in the hopes that they can see Pythia today and seek her counsel. There's this strange rule. The oracle only sees visitors on one day of each month, the 7th day, and only for 9 months out of every year. So you can imagine the anxiety of some of these people who likely traveled a few days, 100 miles, just for the unlikely chance they will meet Pythia. Regardless of the demand, she accepts all who come to seek her counsel, from nobles to peasants, and even emperors. Here comes a procession now. A woman dressed in maiden's robes and a laurel in her hair leads the way. She must be one of the priestesses of the temple. Behind her are 3 nobles, each carrying a small gift and walking with a sacrificial offering, 2 sheep and a black ram. Let's join behind them. Pythia's prophecies are known throughout Greece, and dignitaries from other countries even make the trip just to seek her wise counsel. In 403 BC, Lysander, the Spartan victor of the Peloponnesian War, was warned by Pythia with these words: "Beware the dragon serpent, earthborn, in craftiness coming behind thee." 8 years later, he was slain from behind by Neocorus, who had a serpent painted upon his shield. And there are countless examples actually recorded and written by historians and authors of the time, which we can trace back and actually see how they compare to real events at the time. Oh, we are nearing the temple. There's another priestess who is inspecting the animal offerings the 3 noblemen have brought. She points to the black ram. A guard takes the animal, and the priestess motions for the nobleman to follow her. Seems the 2 other men were unworthy. She's leading him to the Catalian spring, where he must first bathe and purify himself before being able to seek counsel with the oracle. And here are the two main entrances to the temple, with their famous inscriptions chiseled in stone above the doorways. Nothing in excess, and know thyself. That reminds me, according to Plato, when Pythia was asked who was the wisest person in Greece, she responded, "The wisest is Socrates, because he knows that he knows nothing." Let's head on in. Whoa, it's dark in here. There's someone playing the harp down the corridor. This part of the temple is lit only by candles. Every wall is painted with elaborate frescoes or adorned with tapestries depicting scenes with the god Apollo, god of truth, music, poetry, the sun, and prophecy. Down the corridor, you can see the center of the temple, which is lit by the natural light of the sun and sky, through a dome-like opening above. There's the heavy smell of myrrh in the air. We must be close to the entrance of Pythia's chamber. This way. You know, the tradition of the Oracle of Delphi is a strange one with very few parallels in our time. Pythia is the name given to the high priestess who performs the oracle work, but it is also the name of that position. It is similar to the Dalai Lama. The person assumes the full responsibility of the position, and when they die, the next Pythia is found. This is what has kept this tradition alive for centuries. The Pythia has tremendous influence. Her messages have changed the course of history in countless ways. In many instances, she serves the role of an advisor to emperors who seek to know what the gods think of their plans. In 359 BC, Philip II of Macedon consulted Pythia and was told, "With silver spears you may conquer the world," unquote. He proceeded to gain control of the silver mines in Thrace and the Illyrian kingdom, using them to bribe his way to early victories, playing Greek states against each other. Philip also had a notoriously unruly black colt horse, which no one could tame. The Oracle of Delphi told him that whoever could ride his horse would conquer the world. Despite valiant efforts, neither Philip nor his generals could tame the horse. Then his son, Alexander, succeeded when he realized that the horse was actually afraid of his own shadow. Philip then gifted the horse, who was named Bucephalus, to Alexander, who earned the title Alexander the Great when he conquered Asia. When it is time to choose a new Pythia, a woman must volunteer who is worthy and exceptionally knowledgeable on matters of ritual. So most Pythia are former priestesses of the temple here. But there have been cases of Pythia who were peasants or even noblewomen who had outstanding talents in communing with the gods in this way. It is no overstatement to say that the woman serving as Pythia is the most powerful woman in Greece. Let's take these stairs to the lower chamber. Here, we will need these torches. The temple was built around this entrance, which leads into this cavern. We will soon see why. Do you now see why Jung asks, "Is this the place of Pythia?" during his red crystal vision? He may be referring to the physical cavern in which she has her visions, or through his prose, he may be referring to the mental place she must be inhabiting, where she receives these visions. There she is, at the center of the cavern. Her head is shrouded in shadow by a robe that wraps loosely around her body, creating a hood over her head. She is elevated 2 feet off the ground, sitting on a 3-legged golden seat. The chair is positioned over a deep chasm in the cavern floor. Smoke perpetually rises from this hole, and is wafting over Pythia's hooded face. The temple was built around this chasm. The location is uniquely situated above two tectonic plates. The vapors and smoke that naturally rise from the chasm are likely from deep within the earth. She is a woman of about 50, dressed symbolically as a virgin maiden, and she routinely chews on oleander leaves. Part of the obligation of being a Pythia includes renouncing all worldly ties and possessions. This includes separating from your husband and family, which explains the symbolic dress of a virgin. It seems like she is in the middle of delivering her oracle message to a visitor. There are priests and priestesses that surround this space, forming a circle. Some of them are softly chanting, and some are awaiting Pythia's words, which they will transcribe on a parchment. Pythia speaks from this abnormal state, often in poetic verse. Some accounts describe her speaking incoherently, and the accompanying priests will decipher the message. Other accounts describe her speaking eloquently in verse. The oracle messages she delivers are believed to come from underworld powers. Perhaps in her deeply contemplative state, the messages arrive to her in the form of imagery and visions like Jung was experiencing. Could it be that the place that Jung's mind inhabits during the Red Book sessions is the same place that Pythia's mind inhabits? A state that places one in communication with a deep and imaginative center of the unconscious mind. It becomes clear that humans have been exploring the depths of their unconscious in a multitude of ways throughout time. I think it's safe to assume that these things are on Jung's mind when he begins his confrontation with the unconscious. He may have even been using this opportunity to test the veracity of the claims of these methods. Contrary to what our first reaction is when reading the Red Book, Jung isn't doing something new and pioneering. He is reviving something ancient, bringing what is dead back to life. Part 3. Elijah and Salome. Throughout the Red Book, Jung has meaningful encounters with mythic figures. In these visions, he carries on conversations with them, oftentimes even arguing with them. It creates a sense of drama and tension, and when reading it, one must assume that Jung is confronting deep-seated parts of his own being. These are profoundly personal experiences we are witnessing. This passage is dated December 21st, 1913. On the night when I considered the essence of God, I became aware of an image. I lay in a dark depth. An old man stood before me. He looked like one of the old prophets. A black serpent lay at his feet. Some distance away I saw a house with columns. A beautiful maiden steps out of the door. She walks uncertainly, and I see that she is blind. The old man waves to me, and I follow him to the house at the foot of the sheer rock wall. The serpent creeps behind us. Darkness reigns inside the house. We are in a high hall with glittering walls. A bright stone, the color of water, lies in the background. As I look into its reflection, the images of Eve, the tree, and the serpent appear to me. After this, I catch sight of Odysseus and his journey on the high seas. Suddenly, a door opens on the right onto a garden full of bright sunshine. We step outside, and the old man says to me, "Do you know where you are?" I say, "I am a stranger here, and everything seems strange to me, anxious as in a dream. Who are you?" The old man responds, "I am Elijah, and this is my daughter Salome." I respond, "The daughter of Herod, the bloodthirsty woman?" Elijah asks, Why do you judge so? You see that she is blind. She is my daughter, the daughter of the prophet. I say, what miracle has united you? Elijah answers, it is no miracle. It was so from the beginning. My wisdom and my daughter are one. I am shocked. I am incapable of grasping it. Elijah continues, consider this. Her blindness and my sight have made us companions through eternity. I say, forgive my astonishment. Am I truly in the underworld? Salome interrupts, do you love me? I respond, how can I love you? How do you come to this question? I see only one thing. You are Salome, a tiger. Your hands are stained with the blood of the Holy One. How should I love you? Salome answers, you will love me. I say, I love you? Who gives you the right to such thoughts? Salome proclaims, I love you. I say, leave me be, I dread you, you beast. Salome continues, you do me wrong. Elijah is my father, and he knows the deepest mysteries. The walls of this house are made of precious stones. His wells hold healing water, and his eyes see the things of the future. And what wouldn't you give for a single look into the infinite unfolding of what is to come? Are these not worth a sin for you? I respond, your temptation is devilish. I long to be back in the upper world. It is dreadful here. How oppressive and how heavy is the air. Elijah asks, what do you want? The choice is yours. I say, but I do not belong to the dead. I live in the light of day. Why should I torment myself here with Salome? Do I not have enough of my own life to deal with? Elijah says, you heard what Salome said. I respond, I cannot believe that you, the prophet, can recognize her as a daughter and a companion. Is she not engendered from heinous seed? Was she not vain greed and criminal lust? Elijah answers, but she loved a holy man. I say, and shamefully shed his precious blood. Elijah continues, she loved the prophet who announced the new God to the world. She loved him. Do you understand that? For she is my daughter. I respond, do you think that because she is your daughter, she loved the prophet in John, the Father? Elijah answers, by her love shall you know her. I ask, but how did she love him? Do you call that love? Elijah says, what else was it? I respond, I am horrified. Who wouldn't be horrified if Salome loved him? Elijah responds, are you cowardly? Consider this. I and my daughter have been one since eternity. I say, you pose dreadful riddles. How could it be that this unholy woman and you, the prophet of your God, could be one? Elijah asks, why are you amazed? But you see it. We are together. I say, what my eyes see is exactly what I cannot grasp. You, Elijah, who are a prophet, the mouth of God, and she, a bloodthirsty horror. You are the symbol of the most extreme contradiction. Elijah states, we are real and not symbols. I see how the black serpent writhes up the tree and hides in the branches. Everything becomes gloomy and doubtful. Elijah rises. I follow and we go silently back through the hall. Doubt tears me apart. It is all so unreal, and yet a part of my longing remains behind. Will I come again? Salome loves me. Do I love her? I hear wild music, a tambourine, a sultry moonlit night, the bloody staring head of a holy one. Fear seizes me. I rush out. I am surrounded by the dark night. It is pitch black all around me. Who murdered the hero? Is this why Salome loves me? Do I love her, and did I therefore murder the hero? She is one with the prophet, one with John, but also one with me? Was she the hand of God? I do not love her, I fear her. Then the spirit of the depths spoke to me and said, therein you acknowledge her divine power. Must I love Salome? So, what is going on here with Jung meeting Elijah and Salome in his vision? It's helpful to have some context to these two characters. Elijah is a religious prophet who is said to have lived in northern Israel during the 9th century BC. He appears in all the Abrahamic religions as a key figure and is said to have performed miracles comparable to Jesus, including raising the dead, bringing fire down from the sky, entering heaven alive by fire, and being a leader of a school of prophets. Salome, on the other hand, has a much more controversial history. She lived in the 1st century AD, and infamously, she danced before Herod, the ruler of Galilee, during his birthday banquet, and her dancing was so pleasing to Herod that he told her, "Whatever you ask me for, I will give it to you, up to half my kingdom." Unquote. Salome consulted with her mother and answered Herod, "I want you to give me the head of John the Baptist on a platter." Herod was not happy with this request, but he felt strongly that he had to uphold his oath. So he sent guards to the prison and asked them to bring back John the Baptist's head. And on that same night, they did, presenting the platter to Salome. During the Middle Ages, her biblical story took on new life in art and literature. Her dance took on an erotic interpretation and became known as the Dance of the Seven Veils. Salome became a symbol of the temptress, a symbol of unbridled desire, luring away those who are on the road to salvation. It is with these connotations that Elijah and Salome appear in Jung's mind. But rather than assuming that Jung is witnessing some kind of biblical narrative unfold before his inner vision, I think it is more accurate to say that Elijah and Salome are symbols, in a sense, manifestations of aspects of Jung's own mind. Elijah representing the path of spiritual knowledge, virtue, and mystical experience, Salome representing the path of earthly pleasure, vice, and ignorance. It's curious to note that Jung sees Salome blinded, that she's without vision. This could be seen as symbolic of the idea that one who is led only by desire and search for animal impulses and pleasure is in some ways blind, right? They aren't functioning through reason. The struggle between these two ways of living, Elijah and Salome, puts Jung in the center of an existential conundrum. Ultimately, in the writing that follows, Jung arrives at an understanding that implies that the way of Elijah and the way of Salome are not exclusive, but actually mutually dependent. They are not opposites, but instead form a duality of living, and one must learn to navigate it. In that context, Elijah's words make sense when he says, "I and my daughter have been one since eternity." Jung later writes, "The way of life writhes like the serpent, from right to left and from left to right, from thinking to pleasure and from pleasure to thinking. Thus the serpent is an adversary and a symbol of enmity, but also a wise bridge that connects right and left through longing, much needed by our life." Unquote. The symbols of Elijah and Salome, they reappear in several of Jung's visions. Let's explore what I feel is the most startling one, which occurred December 25th, 1913, curiously, on Christmas. On the third night, deep longing to continue experiencing the mysteries seized me. The struggle between doubt and desire was great in me, but suddenly I saw that I stood before a steep ridge in a wasteland. It is a dazzling bright day. I catch sight of the prophet high above me. His hand makes an averting movement, and I abandon my decision to climb up. I wait below, gazing upward. I look. To the right, it is dark night. To the left, it is bright day. The rock separates day and night. On the dark side lies a big black serpent, and on the bright side, a white serpent. They thrust their heads toward each other, eager for battle. Elijah stands on the heights above them. The serpents pounce on one another, and a terrible wrestling ensues. The black serpent seems to be stronger. The white serpent draws back. Great billows of dust rise from the place of struggle, but then I see the black serpent pulls itself back again. The front part of its body has become white. Both serpents curl about themselves, one in light, the other in darkness. Elijah says, "What did you see?" I respond, "I saw the fight of two formidable serpents. It seemed to me as if the black would overcome the white serpent, but behold, the black one withdrew, and its head and the top part of its body had turned white." Elijah says, "Do you understand that?" I respond, "I have thought it over, but I cannot understand it. Should it mean that the power of the good light will become so great that even the darkness that resists it will be illuminated by it?" Elijah climbs before me into the heights, to a very high summit. I follow. On the peak, we come to some masonry made of huge blocks. It is a round embankment on the summit. Inside lies a large courtyard, and there is a mighty boulder in the middle, like an altar. The prophet stands on this stone and says, "This is the temple of the sun. This place is a vessel that collects the light of the sun." Elijah climbs down from the stone. His form becomes smaller in descending, and finally becomes dwarf-like, unlike himself. I ask, "Who are you?" "I am Mime, and I will show you the well springs." The collected light becomes water and flows in many springs from the summit into the valleys of the earth. He then dives down into a crevice. I follow him down into a dark cave. I hear the rippling of a spring. I hear the voice of the dwarf from far below. "Here are my wells. Whoever drinks from them becomes wise." But I cannot reach down. I lose courage. I leave the cave and, doubting, pace back and forth in the square of the courtyard. Everything appears to me strange and incomprehensible. It is solitary and deathly silent here. The air is clear and cool, as on the remotest heights, a wonderful flood of sunlight all around. The great wall surrounds me. A serpent crawls over the stone. It is the serpent of the prophet. How did it come out of the underworld into the world above? I follow it and see how it crawls into the wall. I feel weird all over. A little house stands there with a portico, minuscula, snuggling against the rock. The serpents become infinitely small. I feel as if I too am shrinking. The walls enlarge into a huge mountain, and I see that I am below on the foundation of the crater in the underworld. And I stand before the house of the prophet. He steps out of the door of the house. I say, "I notice, Elijah, that you have shown me and let me experience all sorts of strange things, and allowed me to come before you today, but I confess that it is all dark to me. Your world appears to me today in a new light. Just now it was as if I were separated by a starry distance from your place, which I still wanted to reach today, but behold, it seems to be one and the same place." Elijah says, "You wanted to come here far too much. I did not deceive you, you deceived yourself. He sees badly who wants to see. You have overreached yourself." I say, "It is true. I eagerly longed to reach you, to hear more. Salome startled me and led me into bewilderment. I felt dizzy, because what she said seemed to me to be so monstrous and like madness. Where is Salome?" Elijah says, "How impetuous you are. What is up with you? Step over to the crystal and prepare yourself in its light." A wreath of fire shines around the stone. I am seized with fear at what I see. The coarse peasant's boot, the foot of a giant that crushes an entire city. I see the cross, the removal of the cross, the mourning. How agonizing this sight is. No longer do I yearn. I see the divine child with the white serpent in his right hand and the black serpent in his left hand. I see the green mountain, the cross of Christ on it, and a stream of blood flowing from the summit of the mountain. I can look no longer, it is unbearable. I see the cross and Christ on it in his last hour and torment. At the foot of the cross, the black serpent coils itself. It has wound itself around my feet. I am held fast, and I spread my arms wide. Salome draws near. The serpent has wound itself around my whole body, and my countenance is that of a lion. Salome says, Mary was the mother of Christ. Do you understand? I say, I see that a terrible and incomprehensible power forces me to imitate the Lord in his final torment. But how can I presume to call Mary my mother? Salome says, You are Christ. I stand with outstretched arms like someone crucified, my body taut and horribly entwined by the serpent. You, Salome, say that I am Christ? It is as if I stood alone on a high mountain, with stiff, outstretched arms. The serpent squeezes my body in its terrible coils, and the blood streams from my body, spilling down the mountainside. Salome bends down to my feet and wraps her black hair round them. She lies thus for a long time. Then she cries, I see light. Truly, she sees, her eyes are open. The serpent falls from my body and lies languidly on the ground. I stride over it and kneel at the feet of the prophet, whose form shines like a flame. Elijah says, Your work is fulfilled here. Other things will come. Seek untiringly, and above all, write exactly what you see. Salome looks in rapture at the light that streams from the prophet. Elijah transforms into a huge flame of white light. The serpent wraps itself around her foot as if paralyzed. Salome kneels before the light in wonder-struck devotion. Tears fall from my eyes, and I hurry out into the night like one who has no part in the glory of the mystery. My feet do not touch the ground of this earth, and it is as if I were melting into air. Well, I hope you enjoyed this deep dive into Dr. Carl Jung's Red Book. I really personally feel this is one of the most important books of the 20th century. So, why do I feel this way? I would say 4 reasons. 1, Dr. Carl Jung engages his unconscious willingly and then documents what happens afterward in this incredible, thorough, and even prosaic way. Now, that let alone is already pretty unique among literature of psychology, but I really believe in studying this work for years now, that in the process, Jung reaches a kind of center from which religion and myth is born. And so that's kind of crazy, profound stuff. So now, second reason, I would say that this work, the Red Book, and the work that follows, Jung's psychological research, his clinical work, and all of the lectures he gives for the rest of his life really offer a roadmap for the individual to engage with this kind of process in their own life. In analytical psychology, this meditation that Jung does is called active imagination, and it continues to be kind of an essential tool of analytical psychology and when you're in psychoanalysis with someone who's a Jungian analyst. So it's super fascinating stuff. And this tool, in a sense, that he's provided us with through the Red Book allows us to heal our traumas and untangle our complexes. Number 3, The work, it offers confirmation to all of Jung's later theories. We have to remember this Red Book happens at a time when he hasn't really developed his theories yet. It's early on in his career. And so it confirms the archetypes, the collective unconscious, the idea of the shadow, and this idea of using active imagination in this profound, personal, and transformative way. And number 4, it's honestly just a great work of literature. In its original form, it's a mixture of German, Latin, and Greek. Add to that all these wonderful paintings and illustrations that are featured in it that Jung created himself, which we showed and covered in the first about 20 to 30 minutes of this episode. So, if you're interested in engaging with this work and reading the Red Book, you have 2 options. 1, the facsimile edition, and 2, the reader's edition. The facsimile copy is rather large, and it's meant to be a reproduction of Jung's original. So you have full-page prints of his artworks and his calligraphy text. The reader's edition, on the other hand, is just the text alone, and it's really perfect, really ideal for anyone who wants to read these visions, study them, figure them out, and it's full of just profound footnotes from the editor Sonu Shamdasani, and profuse and profound footnotes. There's a lot. Some of these pages, the footnote covers up more than half the page, but it's a remarkable work in many ways, even just in the translation alone. So you have that to do homework on for yourself. Furthermore, if you'd like to try the meditation that Jung devised for this experience yourself, in this YouTube channel, you'll find a guided meditation I've created, simply titled Guided Meditation, Jung's Digging Method. Many people have tried it already, as you can see in the comments of that video. I still practice it practically every month, if not more than once a month. And it's really a really fascinating experience. Beyond that, if you'd like to support the vision of Creative Codex and what we do on this channel, head over to my Patreon at patreon.com/MJDorian. There, you'll gain access to exclusive episodes such as my Kurt Cobain series, my tarot analysis series, and a monthly Red Book reading series, in which I take a chapter of the Red Book, I read it, I record it, and I add original music to it every month, so you can read along with me. And finally, thank you again for watching this video and engaging with this profound work. I'm MJ Dorian, signing out. Until next time. Dig deep, my friends.